Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce Annual General Meeting. My name is Brad Dunbar, President of Dunbar & Associates Professional Corporation and Chair of the Board of Directors for the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we live and work on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples as we seek a renewed relationship based on the foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As we gather today, just one day after National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, we are reminded of the importance of reflection, remembrance, and action. Throughout the year, the Chamber stays committed to building stronger, more equitable relationships with Indigenous communities. As participants in today's event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity. We hope you'll join us in fostering a positive environment today to ensure a safe and welcoming space for all. We'll be starting this afternoon with the annual general meeting, where we'll reflect on the past year and share updates from the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Once the business portion of our agenda is complete, we'll transition to a fireside chat with our keynote speaker from Scotiabank. Before we begin, a quick note on voting. Only current chamber members attending in person here this afternoon are eligible to vote, and only one representative from each business. If you are the designated voting representative from your organization, you will have received a voting card at the registration desk when you arrived. During the AGM, as motions are presented, we'll invite discussion and then ask you to raise your voting card when indicating support or opposition. With all that, let's get started. Notice to members have been properly given, and achieving quorum of 25 members as outlined in our bylaws, this meeting is properly constituted to conduct business. Can I get a call for a motion for approval of the 2024 annual general meeting minutes?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? All right, carried. All right, so I just want to take a quick moment to kind of reflect on this past year. It's my first year as the chair of the Chamber of Waterloo of Greater KKW. And it was, for me, a very fulfilling year. We set off about 2 years ago on a new strategic direction, one to kind of be more purposeful in our work, to drive up, membership, and to, recognize our shortcomings, especially in areas of DEI, and try to strengthen those. So again, this was our second year into that strategic plan. And I think we did a fantastic job. I'd like to thank you all for coming here tonight. I'd like to thank the Blue Jays for winning their 4 games so that none of us had any conflicts of interest for tonight. Again, I'd like to give a huge shout out to, all the chamber staff for all their hard work over this last year. My fellow board of directors for all their continued support and hard work. Again, all the, volunteers and you members for continue to support the chamber. With your, volunteer and financial support, we're able to accomplish a lot of amazing things. So again, a lot of the focus for the last couple of years has been more on, the advocacy work that we can do to kind of strengthen this business community. So again, you'll have seen the slideshow, you'll have heard a lot of it if you get the emails from us. A lot of it is around, the growth that this region is going through and, what we need to do in order to make sure that we're ready to handle that growth. So again, this year was our big launch of the Vision 1 Million series with the theory that, in about 25 years, this region is going to be at 1 million residents. And how do we prepare this region for that? So again, we can't do that and do all the advocacy work around that without you guys. So thank you very much. Moving to the next item on the agenda, I will now present the financial results. I will apologize. I'm going to be up here a lot, speaking a lot. So sorry. Apparently the chamber couldn't find anyone else to do any of the talking, so you're stuck with me. So again, if you look at the financials for the chamber for this year, again, starting on page 3 is the independent auditor's report. So again, the main thing from that report is that the chamber received a clean audit report again this year. So there is no concerns that there is material misstatement in these financial statements. Going on to the balance sheet, again, a very strong cash position. Again, the results look very similar to 2024, where we're in a strong cash position, not a lot of liabilities. The only kind of main change for this year is that we set up an additional internally restricted reserve fund. Basically, the kind of accounting behind that is this year the chamber needed to upgrade some of its facility auxiliary things to this facility. The main one being they needed air conditioning, apparently. It's one of those things where because it is such a large item and it is going to improve the useful life of the chamber's building, we set up a reserve fund for that so that it's not all being expensed in 1 year. Oh, sorry. If you flip over to the statement of operations, you'll see that we had significant membership fee growth and growth in most of our other revenues. So again, a very good financial year for the chamber. Again, with any kind of growing industry, we'll have increases in some expenses, main ones being repairs and maintenance. So on top of the AC, there was some other little repairs and maintenance done to the building. And then we also had increases in salaries so that we could, keep people working for us. So at the end of the year, we're showing excess of revenues of about $29,000. But again, we transferred most of that to that reserve fund, and we'll recognize that over the next 5 years. And that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about for that. So can I get a call for a motion approving the financial statements?
On the recommendation of the Board of Directors, I move that the financial statements for the year ended June 30, 2025, as audited by the firm RLB LLP, be approved.
And I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? No questions? It's very riveting stuff. I could speak all day for it if you want. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? All right, carried. Now, can I get a call for a motion appointing auditors for the 2025-2026 fiscal year?
The Board of Directors recommends that the firm of RLB LLP be appointed auditors of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce for the 2025-2026 fiscal year.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Can I get a call for a motion for ratification of chamber business?
I would move that resolutions, minutes, contracts, appointments and payments, acts and proceedings of the Board of Directors and officials of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce up to the present time be hereby ratified and approved, and said directors and officials released from all liability herewith.
I second that emotion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I would now like to call on Scott Gilfillan to report on the results of the 2025 election of the board on behalf of the nominating committee.
I didn't want to climb up the stage. So on behalf of the nominating committee, the chamber bylaws provide that the chamber be managed by a board consisting of not less than 11 and not more than 22 directors. A nominating committee appointed by the board recommended 4 candidates for the available positions on the board. The call for independent nominations for the 2025-2026 Board of Directors closed on May 2nd, 2025, with no additional nominees. As such, an election is not required.
Scott Gilfillan, as part of the nominating committee, can you confirm that in accordance with our bylaws, a slate of candidates was set by the nominating committee and notice sent to chamber voting delegates representing our member firms in good standing that an election is not required?
I so confirm.
The slate of nominees, as determined by the nominating committee, who will be joining the 2025-26 Board of Directors includes Fawn Lang for Food for Kids, Waterloo Region, Linda Lee, Dillon Consulting, Gwyneth Static, Gowling WLG, Kyle Broman from Conestoga Electric.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. The following individuals are currently at the end of their 2-year term and will be appointed for another 2-year term. Can I get a motion for appointment of the following individuals for an additional 2-year term? Gina Hudell, Can-Canot Inc., Mohsen Abdullah, Token Creative Services, Chloe Hamilton, Warm Embrace Elder Care, Geraldine Stafford, Waterloo Region Police Service, and Everton Wilmot Technologies Inc.
And I would move that Gina Hudell, Mohsen Abdullah, Chloe Hamilton, Geraldine Stafford, Everton William all be appointed for a 2-year term commencing the 2025-2026 fiscal year.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. As such, I'm pleased to announce that the following individuals form the 2025-2026 Board of Directors for the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Board members, I ask you please make your way to the stage as your name is mentioned to be recognized and for the official induction. Mohsen Abdullah, Token Creative Services. Fawn Lang, Food for Kids, Waterloo Region. Linda Lee, Dillon Consulting. Gwen Estedig, Cowling WLG. Kyle Broman, Conestoga Electric. Ruben Dominguez, TD Commercial Banking. Brad Dunbar, Dunbar and Associates Professional Corporation. Shelley Forwell, Walter Fady. Chloe Hamilton, Warm Embrace Elder Care. Nick Hefner, Hefner Lexus, Hefner Toyota. Gina Hudell, Cannot Inc. Miriam Rasool, Lumine Group. Kathy Snyder, NOPAC Canada Inc. Stephanie Sulis, Little Mushroom Catering. Geraldine Stafford, Waterloo Region Police Services. Roberto Villamar, Cohico SA. Everton Wilmot Technologies Inc. This is your board of directors for 25-26.
I'd like to welcome City of Waterloo's Mayor Dorothy McCabe to the stage for the official induction of the board.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. You're a shy bunch. You should come up front, I think. Can I get you? Okay, maybe not quite that close, but in all seriousness, thank you very much for volunteering to serve on the Chamber's board. We know in a time like this, in the last few years, there's a slow decline in the amount of people who volunteer for various things in the community. So it really means a lot for busy people like you who, on top of serving, own your own businesses or run your own businesses. So it really is a testament to how much you care about the Chamber and the broader community that you're giving your time to serve the business community. So thank you very much. And with that, I have the pleasure of reading the oath of office, which I will ask when I'm finished reading the oath of office that you all respond with, "I do." So I swear that I will faithfully and truly perform my duty as a board member of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce, that I will, in all matters connected with the discharge of such duty, do all things as I shall truly and conscientiously believe to be adapted to promote the objects for which the said chamber was constituted, according to the true intent and meaning of the same. So help me God. All right, thank you very much. You can be seated. Although, can we do a quick selfie? That's it. All right. I think I got everybody. All right. There we go.
Thank you. Is it right? It's your name, right? I'm totally.
Thank you, Mayor McCabe, for being here today. The Greater KW Chamber would not be able to support our members without the continued backing from our corporate partners. They are listed in the annual report, but I'd also like to thank them for their support this past year, as several of them are here in attendance today or watching virtually. The Chamber Chair's Circle sponsors, BDO, Conestoga College, Cowan Insurance Group, Equitable, EY, GHD, Gore Mutual, Google, Gowling, Hefner Lexus and Hefner Toyota, Home Hardware Stores, Immigration Partnership, KPMG, Manulife, McCarter Grespin Lawyers, MNP, Scotiabank, Sun Life, and the University of Waterloo. The Chamber patron sponsors, BDC, Bell Canada, Canadian Western Bank, Enbridge, Explore Waterloo, MCAP, Miller Thompson, PwC, and TD. The Chamber trustee sponsors, Activa, BMO, Conestoga Meats, MTE, Walter Fady, Waterloo EDC, and Wilfrid Laurier University. Title sponsors, Manulife Behind the Business Podcast, Canadian Western Bank Business After 5 Series, Conestoga College Business Expo, Rock Solution Chamber Fest, Charcoal Group Chamber Young Professional Series, Scotiabank Female Founder Series, Hefner Lexus and Hefner Toyota Golf Scramble, BMO International Women's Day Breakfast, Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region Networking Series, Hefner Lexus and Hefner Toyota Women's Leadership Series, Cowan Insurance Group Business Excellent Awards Gala, BDC Small Business Awards, Cowan Insurance Group Links and Leads Golf Tournament, and Conestoga College Vision 1 Million RV Ready Series. And of course, our media partners, City News 570, 96.7 Chime FM, Country 106.7, and CTV. And of course, our physician recruitment sponsors. Thank you to all of the sponsors for continued support of the Chamber's healthcare initiatives. These sponsors are crucial to the success of the Chamber's annual Family Medicine Resident Weekend. Going into its 27th year, this event is instrumental in residents' decisions to establish their family practices here in Waterloo Region. I'd also like to thank all the volunteers who have dedicated their time to the Chamber programs over the past year. Whether that's assisting with event preparation, planning, and execution, or assisting with advocacy and healthcare initiatives. We're so thankful for your commitment to the Chamber. I'd like to recognize a couple volunteers who fulfilled their term this past year as a committee chair or vice chair. If you're in attendance this evening, I ask that you please make your way to the side of the stage for a certificate presentation and photo. Thank you to Danny Baisley, Post Media, Chamber Young Professional Committee. Maddie Campbell, Canadian Student Leadership Association, Chamber Young Professional Committee. Okay. Reem Al-Kadi, Zen Organize Me, Women's Leadership Committee. And AJ Feltis, Cowan Insurance Group, Business After 5 Committee. And none of them are here, so we'll keep going. I'd also like to recognize and thank the following directors who have completed their terms on the Chamber's Board of Directors. I ask you to please make your way to the side of the stage for a certificate presentation and photo. Thank you to Scott Gilfillan, PricewaterhouseCoopers LLP. Carlene Carroll, Wilfrid Laurier University. Joa Minta, For All Ice Cream. And Chris Andre Gowling, WLG LLP. Please join me in a round of applause to show our appreciation for their time and dedication. We will now hold a short meeting of the Board of Directors to appoint the Executive Committee for 2025-2026. I call this board meeting to order. In accordance with our bylaws, the Board of Directors recommends the appointment of the members of the Executive Committee for a one-year term. Call for the motion.
I move that the appointed officers for a one-year term on the 2025-2026 Executive Committee be Brad Dunbar, Chair, Mohsin Abdullah, Vice Chair, Gina Hudel, Vice Chair, Miriam Rasool, Treasurer, and Stephanie Soulis, Secretary.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I call for a motion to adjourn the board meeting.
I would move that all business having been conducted, the board meeting is adjourned.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. If there's no further business to attend to, I call for a motion adjourning the annual general meeting.
I would move that all business having been conducted, the annual general meeting is adjourned.
I second the motion.
All right, so that adjourns the general meeting for 2025. Again, I just want to take a quick moment to thank you all for coming. Again, everyone has busy lives, and I appreciate the effort that you guys made tonight to be part of this. Again, this general meeting doesn't happen if we don't meet quorum, so I appreciate you all being in attendance. We are also excited to announce that we are now accepting nominations for the 2026 Business Excellence Award Gala, which will be held on Thursday, March 12th, 2026. To nominate a local business, please visit beagala.ca, and nominations will be accepted until Sunday, November 23rd, 2025. We're thrilled to have Scotiabank as our speaker sponsor today and appreciate their ongoing support. I'm excited to have the opportunity to introduce today's speaker. Warren Hastings is the Managing Director of Investment Strategy at Global Investment Solutions. Warren's career in the financial industry began in 2005. He joined Global Investment Solutions, formerly the Global Portfolio Advisory Group, in 2013, and is currently responsible for the management and oversight of the group's Canadian investment strategy team. Prior to joining GIS, Warren was an equity research associate with Scotiabank Global Banking and Markets, assisting with the coverage of North American telecom and cable companies since 2005. Before joining Scotiabank, Warren held various positions at Lucent Technologies, Inc. Warren is a CFA charter holder and holds an MBA degree from Queen's University and a BSc degree in engineering science from the University of Toronto. We're thrilled to have Warren Hastings here with us today. Moderating this fireside chat is Ian McLean, President and CEO of the Greater KW Chamber. Please join me in welcoming Warren Hastings and Ian McLean.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Warren.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the invitation.
I'll make couple of comments and an observation before we get started. One is that we stand between this crowd and drinks and snacks, so we'll try and keep it
brief.
Keep it to the time we're allowed. The second is thanks to Scotiabank and James and some of your colleagues are here from Scotiabank for the last number of years. They've always have been great sponsors of this event and had folks like yourself, senior people coming to help share what's happening in Canada, globally, but also in the region of Waterloo. So thank you for joining us. And as we start, I just got back from 4 weeks in New Zealand and Australia. I'm primarily down there for the World Chamber of Commerce Congress, which is held every 2 years around the world. It happened to be in Australia. I can say that the entire theme of the conference, no matter what the topic was global trade. And without naming the United States or Trump, everything was about that. And so obviously for us as a Canadian, people would ask, well, how are you dealing with it? Because they realized how close, not only in proximity, but in trade. But I think that's just a context piece that it's fascinating that everywhere around the world is concerned about where we're at in terms of global trade.
It's a global leader in it's and a major part of the global economy. So the U.S. that is, and so no doubt that the discussions and the concern around trade are of global import. But yeah, probably nowhere more so than here. 20% of our economy is tied to sending stuff south of the border.
Yeah.
And it is an important part, very important part of our domestic economy.
So rising trade tensions and protectionism have clouded global economic outlook for right around the world. I mean, no one's immune from this. But in particular for, as you just pointed out, for trade export driven economies. So Canada, obviously, primarily the U.S., but also China and its impact on the global trade. What's the base case for growth this year? Because we're already seeing in the U.S., I mean, if you believe the numbers for the next quarter, inflation is going up in the U.S., their trade numbers are going down, unemployment is going up, none of which is good for anywhere around the world, Canada included. But what's the case for global growth when we're so dependent on what happens around the world?
Well, the outlook is perhaps a little more optimistic than it was early spring of this year when we had Liberation Day, and there were real concerns not only in the real economy but in financial markets about what the prospect of some of these really onerous trade relationships and changes to trade dynamics were going to be, and we saw that reflected in financial markets, a lot of volatility. Since then, I think the investing community and I think many participants in the real economy or outside investing and finance have come to the realization that perhaps the notion of tariffs and trade policy is really an end to a means to accomplish other ends. And so we saw the U.S. back off some of those maximalist positions that were put on the table right out of the chute, and either water them down or withdraw them or delay them. And so at this juncture, the outlook's a little more constructive. It certainly, we're going to be in a different tariff regime and a different trade environment than we were before this year began. But nothing as onerous or as dire as might have been the case in early April. And so that leads to our forecast and our outlook, which calls for growth, economic growth. That's globally, that's in the U.S., that's in Canada. It's not going to be the tremendous levels that we saw coming out of the pandemic or even in 23 or 24, but there will be growth, and that's our expectation. As some of the more concerning aspects of U.S. trade policy kind of move into the rear view mirror. Still a concern, but not enough to tip the global economy or the Canadian economy or the U.S. economy into recession. That's our base case at this point.
I guess one of the things that springs to mind, and locally here, whether it's our partners at Best Waterloo and foreign direct investment, which is done by Water Development Corporation, but our chambers of commerce, colleague in Cambridge, are feeling there is an investment freeze on businesses making those investments in machinery or new hires or expanding into new markets because of the uncertainty. So uncertainty is producing some freeze on the investments. And so I guess it leads to this question. I mean, if you're advising or talking to the Prime Minister, which actually I do know that Scotiabank does, but how would you identify Canada's priority infrastructure for investing to expanding to global markets? Because we know the Canadian Chamber, local chambers, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce saying we have to develop trade markets in other places, or at least enhance those, whether it's Europe, South Korea, other places, so that we're not as dependent on the U.S. And so thinking about what chambers of commerce have been talking about for years, which is trade enabling infrastructure, ports, pipelines, energy corridor. Are those the sorts of things that we should be investing, and the Prime Minister and the government should be doing, to make sure that we have a different capacity for different markets?
Well, if the Prime Minister did call me, he hasn't yet, but the lines are open. The answer would be yes, and that's really to build resilience into the Canadian economy. I think one of the things that we talk about in the investment world is diversification, and we talked about that in the context of asset classes, but I think economies or businesses even can think of that. And we've got many business owners here, people that are involved in commerce. Never to put all your eggs in one basket, and similar concept I think applies to nation states. And so and I think the government has gotten that message that there is an impetus and initiatives underway to build out the country's infrastructure, to diversify its export markets, and give it a leg up in negotiations with any of its trade partners, so that if one of these difficult situations vis-a-vis the U.S. arises again, we're not left scrambling. So I think the message has been received by the Prime Minister's office. It's a matter of execution now, and I think there's a receptiveness in Ottawa to removing the red tape or any of the regulatory burden that perhaps in years past has delayed some of those initiatives.
Canada has avoided recession so far. You're saying that you still see the outlook for North America and Canada for growth this coming year. We've been fortunate that CUSMA, the Canadian-U.S. Mexico trade agreement, for the most part, now big exceptions, auto, steel, aluminum, now forestry products, but for big parts of the economy, the free trade agreement is still holding, as fragile as it is right now. But the renegotiations of CUSMA are coming.
Yes, they are.
Can we continue to avoid going into recession or decline in the economy with that hanging over the country?
Well, like I said, so I think we can. It does, though, depend on Canada putting forward a very strong team and arguing its case and protecting some of the provisions in the current agreement, or at least ensuring that our trade partners abide by them. 85% of goods that are exported from Canada to the U.S. are covered by CUSMA, and so therefore are tariff-free. And we need to ensure that those protections are kept in place to support a major part of the Canadian economy. Again, 20% of this country's economy is exporting goods to the United States. So while the work of diversifying export markets continues, a working and robust trade agreement with the U.S. Is imperative, and ensuring that remains the case. It depends on really an all-star team of negotiators in Canada at the table with its counterparts in the United States and Mexico. And I think we've got the individuals we need to negotiate those agreements.
I'm sure we have them on our side, but the question is whether there's a rational actor on the other side, which is
fair point.
Very much in doubt. Let's turn a little bit to real estate. Obviously, around this region, and I know you and your colleagues know how hot a market, certainly the 401 corridor is, and what we call Canada's innovation corridor, from this part of southwestern Ontario through Toronto. We are having discussions and have for the last number of years of saying we're going to be 1 million people within 20 to 25 years. And that rests on we have to build something in the order of 70,000 housing units in the next 20 to 25 years. You know, we need healthcare, hospital, doctors. We need 100,000. That's roughly 100,000 new jobs that don't exist right now. Real estate prime amongst them is we have to have places to appropriately house. The market's faced huge headwinds, inflation, the cost of construction, but all of it really led by interest rates. How do you see that evolving, and where do we think interest rates are going? Because it does impact both residential borrowers for the end product, but it impacts business all the way through, whether it's carrying costs for manufacturers or whether it's in the supply chain for products. Where do you see housing going and connect that to interest rates?
Yep, very, very good question. And a couple of things that are packed in there, and interest rates and the housing market prospects for it are pretty interlinked. And so the outlook for Canadian housing has, as you pointed out, faced a couple of challenges of late, most importantly being interest rates. There are other factors too. Changes in immigration policy have affected the market. But interest rates, because it's a levered asset class, and the borrowing rates that consumers need to purchase residential real estate rose over the past few years, a consequence of an inflation problem that our economy, not immune, many economies around the world, were dealing with. And so the rates rose in response to higher inflation. Fortunately, central banks have done an enviable job in bringing inflation under control. There's a little bit more work to do, but there's likely enough latitude for policy rates, that's what central banks said, to bring those rates lower. I was talking to the Scotiabank team earlier, and there is a distinction between central bank policy rates and the rates that are used to determine what one pays or what one uses to finance a mortgage. So slightly different dynamics, but the fact that inflation influenced yields across the rate spectrum means that rates are probably poised to nudge a little bit lower, but certainly not to increase. And that's good news for the housing market. It means that this wave of borrowers that this year, because they borrowed when rates were really low, they have to refinance every 5 years. It meant that this year and next are probably years when interest rate refinancing shocks likely come to an end. And that should be a tailwind for the Canadian housing market. I think that's the biggest thing cyclically that will influence the Canadian housing market. As you say, over time, population growth likely means that there's going to be ongoing demand for housing needs here and many other parts of the country, and that likely supports that, and employment likely support the housing market long term. As I think about it, unemployment, another important factor in obtaining a loan and having the ability to purchase a home. No doubt, no surprise that has been rising in Canada. As we see it, that likely peaks this year or next, and then begins to wane after that. So unemployment starts to head lower, and that by itself would be supportive of the Canadian housing market.
So just thinking about the Canadian government, we have their budget coming up in short order federally. They've got a couple of things they're going to have to accomplish. One is they've already made announcements on national defense and investments, which makes sense given what the U.S. has talked about. They've made announcements around some major infrastructure, nation-building infrastructure that they're putting billions of dollars towards. And the size of government needs to be brought under control. The Prime Minister has said he's going to reduce that. What do you see in the federal budget that's going to be able to square that circle, right? Investing in people and jobs that are being affected, whether it's steel, auto, manufacturing in this part of the world, along with the cost of government going down so they can make the investments that we're going to need to kind of reshape the Canadian economy?
So, I don't know that there's a balanced budget that's anywhere or that's coming or on the horizon near term. But the important things are investments that the country is making to support long-term economic growth. And that helps you out of a deficit situation and out of debt load. Fortunately, Canada's blessed with a AAA sovereign debt rating that's unique amongst its G7 peers. So it has the ability to borrow if it needs to. But to maintain that, the country has to invest in infrastructure that supports long-term economic growth. And that's part and parcel of what's likely to be featured in this upcoming budget. As you mentioned, defense initiatives to meet its NATO requirements, pushed by the U.S., but I think adopted by all of the NATO countries, is likely to force some tough decision making on the part of the federal government. But those, reading the press, there's been discussion about reductions in force and other areas of efficiency initiatives that the federal government might take, is contemplating in an effort to offset that increased defense spending.
One of the things that has happened is everything has become politicized in the U.S. And the reason we talk a lot about it is because of how directly it impacts us. The U.S. federal bank, or Fed, has dual mandates. One is obviously on the employment side, one's on the monetary side. Trump's threatened to fire the Fed chair and now other governors, and that politicizes the whole process. And Canada's impacted by this because their interest rate regime can impact our Canadian dollar. We don't know where that's at. So maybe try and draw where's the Canadian dollar going to go in context of, lower dollar might help some manufacturers here, but it depends on where the inputs are coming from. But the Federal Reserve interest rate in the U.S. impacts us here in a number of different ways. One, the Canadian dollar. B, or the second part, what our interest rates can be in terms of the spread between Canada and the U.S. Where do you see that going?
Yeah, you're right. The Canadian dollar and currencies, generally speaking, typically are dictated by what's called an interest rate differential. So central banks around the world have policy rates, and to the extent that one central bank has a higher policy rate than another, and that difference increases, it does mean that there is a higher return in that higher interest rate environment for global depositors or global savers, and that means there tends to be a flow of capital to that region, and hence currency appreciation. So, for example, not that it's going to happen, but if the U.S. started to increase its central bank policy rate at a pace far in excess of Canada, you'd see the U.S. dollar strengthen in comparison to the Canadian dollar, and vice versa. Now, what is our forecast? How do we see that dynamic evolving? At Scotia, we believe that policy rates in the U.S. are likely headed lower, and that's in response to some of the things you talked about: rising unemployment stateside, plus potentially some of the politicization of the Federal Reserve that you talked about. Whereas in Canada, the likelihood is that because of some nascent inflation risk, the Bank of Canada has done a very good job of getting inflation down from the high levels we saw 3 years ago to something that's approaching its target, 2% target, but it's not quite there yet. And there's some debate as to whether it actually gets there over the next year. And so our forecast is actually that the Bank of Canada may pause its interest rate cuts at the end of this year, and potentially even begin to bring them back up at the end of 2026. That's a forecast. Forecasts are subject to change. If that happens, you're likely to see the Canadian dollar appreciate relative to the US dollar. And that's what's embedded in our forecast. So if we talk about or think about a Canadian dollar that's 72 cents US right now, by the end of 2026, by our forecast, that gets somewhere closer to about 78. That's a little bit high relative to consensus forecast, but at the bank, at Scotiabank, that's how we see things evolving. And it has to do with interest rate differentials and Bank of Canada policy rate rising in contrast with one that is declining in the US.
Okay, and we, as you know, we've had elections in Ontario and Canada in the last 6 months or thereabouts. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce forecasted in early 2025, as we're going into that election cycle, that Southwestern Ontario, part of the country that we're in here, including the region of Waterloo, would be disproportionately impacted by the tariffs if they were put in place for a lengthy period of time. Because of our dependence on the U.S. market. How have we done? I mean, you mentioned we haven't gone into recession. How have we done relative to what some of those forecasts with the Canadian Chamber, Scotiabank had a view of what that looked like? Have we done better than what those initial forecasts were?
So comparing the actual results to...
You know, everyone speculated what happened to tariffs were in place.
Right. Yeah, so the outlook has improved. The outlook's improved since early spring of this year, when the forecasts were pretty dire, and so it's not gangbusters growth that our bank and I think many consensus economists would forecast. But it avoids a recessionary scenario. So I think if you looked at the evolution of economic growth forecasts over the course of the year, at the beginning of the year, quite constructive and positive because there was a view that regulatory reform in the U.S. would enhance growth in that country. That perhaps the concern about tariffs wouldn't be as pronounced as was thought. That was all reversed by the time early spring rolled around. Liberation Day, April the 2nd, some very onerous trade policies announced by the U.S. At that point, there were expectations that our economy, the global economy, might dip into recession. And since then, we've seen an evolution in U.S. trade policy, one that is not as constructive as it was at the beginning of the year, but more benign than it was on Liberation Day, and those forecasts have begun to improve. And so economic growth and earnings growth expectations too have followed that trajectory. And so it depends on what forecast we're talking about. We've outperformed those that existed early spring, but we're probably a little bit below, maybe on par with those that existed at the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. When we talk about the Canada-U.S. renegotiations of the CUSMA agreement, you touched on that earlier. One of the things that some analysts are saying, I'm interested in what the bank's view is look, the U.S. midterms are coming up. Well, no, they're not. They're 16 months away. They will be in the negotiations before we get to the midterms. People kind of think as if we've only got 3 years, 3 months, and 22 days left of Trump's, and people are counting it in those terms now. Yeah, no. They are. So the renegotiation of CUSMA is going to be impacted by U.S. politics, obviously the president. Where do you, like, more specifically, if it's fundamentally changed, what does that do for an area of the country here that is totally very dependent on advanced manufacturing, construction, agriculture, food processing, all things that are going to be impacted by what's already in the free trade agreement?
So the initial expectation, and sort of just to give folks a bit of a timeline, the renegotiation of CUSMA was kind of kickstarted, was announced. There's a comment period, a 45-day comment period that I think ended yesterday. Yep. It will end at the end of this month. Beginning in November, there will be hearings on the trade agreement. And then the official negotiations start July 1 of next year. And after that, there are a couple of pathways or a couple of ways that this could go. The existing agreement could be renewed for another 16 years. It could be renewed on an annual basis for a 10-year period, or both parties could withdraw from it with 6 months' notice. So we've got a couple of ways to go. I think for the benefit of this country and given its dependency, at least in the short term, and until we can diversify our trade relationships, is to continue with the agreement on equal, if not better, terms. Now, the early thinking or some of the early opinion on what could come of this agreement or what the U.S. might be looking for have been written in the press. Those include greater access to dairy, the dairy industry in this country, as well as potentially greater U.S. content in automobiles. Now, that probably has implications for this region. 1 in 5 jobs in this area is tied to manufacturing, probably excluding aerospace. So if you toss that in the mix, you're probably talking about more employment. And so that will be up to the to ensure that those parts or that Canadian manufacturing has a role to play in those. So perhaps it's designated U.S. part, but it derives components from Canada, or there's part of the manufacturing process that exists in Canada. That relationship would have to continue, and I think it'd be incumbent on our trade negotiators to ensure that those provisions, particularly for the automotive industry, are maintained.
Yeah, and the reality is there's some parts the U.S. is going to have to understand. They're either going to drive old cars because there won't be any new cars built in North America if those provisions are not. But you're dealing with the one audience of one who doesn't understand that, isn't that smart. That's a challenge. But it's certainly very problematic for negotiators when the base of the integrated auto sector, as an example, is just not understood anymore. Okay, but we can talk about that all day. Let's move on. We've got 2 more topics before we make sure we're not between drinks and snacks for the group. One is artificial intelligence, and I think this is one that I know, and we hear this from many of our members. They want to know, they're aware of artificial intelligence. They're aware it's happening fast in every sector: healthcare, auto, services, you name it. Everyone is saying, what is AI? How is it going to affect my business? How do I take advantage of it? What's the bank's view of, and I guess I'll put it this way, the promises and pitfalls of AI and how quickly it's coming and how quickly business is going to have to adjust to it?
So you'll have to wait about a month for the bank's view. You just
we could break news here today if you want.
A little teaser. We're still formulating those views, but a little teaser. The bank will have an investment symposium in early November, and one of the topics will be artificial intelligence, and we'll have views that take into account economics or take into account input from our economics team, from global banking and markets, and folks that focus on industries from a financial standpoint, as well as wealth management, the other operating businesses within the bank. So stay tuned. But I think some of the initial takeaways and lessons learned from this still nascent AI revolution. I think it has the promise of being a revolutionary technology. One, in the short term, it has driven tremendous capital investment, and that in itself has helped to support the U.S. economy. So, in other parts of the U.S. economy, we can talk about the consumer, which is the biggest part of the U.S. economy. It's about 70%. And there's some debate over the strength of the consumer given rising unemployment. But an offset to that is capital investment, which is about 15% of the U.S. economy. And that has been really propelled by all of the investment that we're seeing in artificial intelligence. That's everything from data centers to the power grid to microprocessors that power some of this software. Longer term, there's likely going to be disruption in the labor force, and we've already heard leaders from major companies in the U.S., Walmart among them, explaining that some jobs will be transformed dramatically. There will be some jobs that are displaced, but at the same time, there are likely to be jobs that replace it. That's always the case with technological revolutions, and people in their current roles likely will become a lot more productive by virtue of some of the things that AI can do. And it remains to be seen what the effect on the labor market is. But in the short term, it has driven a real resurgence in capital investment, which itself has helped to support the global economy. It's shown up, as many of you probably know, it has shown up in the financial markets. It has led to a very small proportion of stocks accounting for a big weight in even the world's largest equity indices. So there may be a bit of an imbalance there that shakes out over time. But like I say, for the short term, the economic impacts are undeniable, and they've helped to support U.S. economic growth.
Underlying that, I kind of hear, the dot-com bubble and break is with everyone trying to get into AI is going to be conscious and careful about what you're investing in and which companies are doing AI. Listen, just last, and you touched on the changing labor force. It would actually mean some change for the hiring that occurs. Last question. In the bank, obviously, in financial markets, you've got the equity markets, you've got the investment markets. One of the things that there's volatility, whether it's on the equity side, fixed income is strange now because of where interest rates are at, and you've got alternative assets. Maybe kind of give a context of, because that can be for people's retirements, but also it does affect those three things that impact business and their carrying costs, their cost of operating capital, et cetera, are all driven by those. What's the view on those three asset classes for the bank?
Well, the newest one, as you mentioned, alternative assets, that has attracted a lot of attention lately. It's interesting. One of the areas that's received a lot of focus in alternative investments. So these aren't stocks; they're not bonds. These are they can take a couple of different forms: hedge funds or private assets. So these are securities that are unlisted. There are many a well-known company these days that aren't publicly traded, but are worth significant sums. OpenAI, perhaps, going back to the AI discussion, is just one example. But because of this, because of the number of companies out there that are private, there's a part of the economy that, absent alternative assets, and in particular private assets, wouldn't be investable in any way by individuals who can only own stocks or bonds, and so that is changing. There's a democratization in the alternative asset realm that now makes it possible to own some of those private companies, and even very well-known ones. And from an investment standpoint, their benefit is that when traditional assets zig, these zag, and so they can help to support and hold up a portfolio's value when publicly traded financial markets go awry. We saw examples of that earlier this year. We saw examples of that 3 years ago in 2022. We had an odd sell-off in both stocks and bonds. So that's the benefit of alternative assets. Now, as to how we think about positioning portfolios right now, given some of the concerns that we've mentioned, unemployment, perhaps some hiccups in the economy that might come down the road, we have a greater preference for fixed income in a portfolio, and a slightly lesser preference for equities. All of this, of course, is unique to an individual's investor profile. We've got many professionals here. Some of them are in the crowd that can help direct you to someone that can help you make decisions as to what that mix ought to be. But from a big picture standpoint, given those risks, as well as higher interest rates and the potential benefit that fixed income investors get, when things go tough, there's a flight to quality, and that tends to increase the price of bonds. We see greater opportunity, greater risk-adjusted returns in fixed income than we do in equities. So if we're putting together a portfolio today, we weighted a little less in stocks, a little more in fixed income, with an appropriate mix of alternative assets to properly diversify.
All right, we're going to leave it there. As Brad comes up to close off the meeting, I want to thank you and the team from Scotia for being part of this meeting and the AGM, and for sharing your thoughts and observations. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So thank you once again to Warren for joining us today and sharing those insights, and to Scotiabank for your continued support. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors for today's event. Speaker sponsor being Scotiabank, and obviously our hosts, Maxwell's Concerts and Events. We'd also like to send a very special thank you to our caterer for today's event, Food Zen, which is owned and operated by Destiny. As an Indigenous-owned business, we recognize that providing this support immediately following National Day for Truth and Reconciliation carries additional weight and personal meaning. We deeply appreciate Destiny's efforts in making today's gathering possible, and we are grateful for her partnership. And finally, we'd like to thank you for attending today's event, whether you're watching remotely right now or attending live with us right now. I also want to say, if you wanted to ever second a motion or shake hands with the mayor, or if you really want to listen to Ian talk for hours and hours, please apply for the board. We accept applications in the spring, so look out for that. For those attending in person, we have drinks and appetizers, which will be available the second I stop speaking. So we hope you'll join us at the reception. And following the reception, if you wouldn't mind taking a few seconds, there is an iPad on your way out where you can submit a rating or any comments. So again, if you have any suggestions to improve this, like making the chair speak less, those are always welcome. And thank you, and have a great day.